Hey trumpet players, Jim here. We're going to talk about greasing valve slides. I'll give you the details on that song, which is called Mojo, in the description. The thing that's important about it today is that it starts on a low D with the third valve slide out. If you can't move that slide, you can't play that note in tune. If you can't play that note in tune, this piece is going to sound bad. So let's fix that, among other things. It's time to get greasy. I've used all kinds of greases over the years. I used to use axle grease right out of the automotive department. Most of the time now I stick to store-bought greases like some of the ones you can see there. There's probably 1,000 different greases that you can use. The most important thing is to use grease on your trumpet slides. All of the slides on your trumpet have to move, and some of them have to move quite easily. They also all need to have some grease on them so that they don't leak. They could potentially leak air, but more likely they're going to leak some spittle, or they're just going to get permanently stuck. Small ones like your second valve slide, possibly your first valve slide, and your main tuning slide can use a pretty heavy grease, and there's lots of that on the market. I've got a few here. That's the summer, I call this the red goo, but if you've had it long enough, it doesn't seem to be red anymore. There's ones that look like they could be cork grease, but they're not. This fun stuff is LeBlanc Slideys, which is meant for those tuning slides. Heaven makes light slide oil and heavy slide oil. This Yamaha product actually makes a liar out of me because I just told you were going to get greasy, and this one has a Pretenda fingertip on it, so that you can just squeeze the goo and not use your finger. Now, where's the fun in that? That's why I keep paper towel and Kleenex handy for when I'm messing with my slides. Now, the first and most important slide on your instrument has to be your main tuning slide. If your main tuning slide doesn't move relatively easily, and I mean kind of like that, you have to work at it, but it's going to go. It's not stuck. It needs to move like that, and it needs to have some grease on it to make that happen. I'm going to just use a little bit of this Yamaha stuff because, hey, it's already got a finger. A little bit on there, in and out. If I got too much on it, I can clean that off with Kleenex or paper towel. Now, when it's in like this, that's great. Don't leave it in like this. It has to be out somewhat. They built your instrument too short on purpose. Pull it out. It's your main tuning slide will be somewhere between, say, there and there, maybe even out. I was pretty much like that in high school, but it's going to be out. I usually play in that vicinity now, but you can never be sure. There's things called tuners. There's also things called ears that can help you figure out where that thing belongs. I would, if I were you, take the thing out about the thickness of my pinky and leave it there for a while. Like, first year. If you don't, and you play that tune that I was just playing, Mojo, you are going to sound so bad right from the outset. Here's another contributor to that problem, that issue. Your third valve slide needs to move. If you look at mine, I push my valve down, it's going to drop. It's that loose. If yours isn't that loose, see it going in and out there? If it isn't that loose, you're probably not going to be able to move it without jerking the horn while you play. It needs to be able to go out and back in while you're playing. I keep some grease on this, and I keep it just like that. Flippy floppy. I've got this style of keeper on it. You might have a different style of keeper on yours to keep it from falling out. You might not even have one. I've got a trumpet over there. It just falls out randomly. You probably have a trumpet with this kind of setup where there's a little goober on there and an adjustable goober on there, and you can put that where you want it. Now I want you to listen to, I'm going to bring this close to the microphone. I want you to listen to these slides. especially that first valve slide. It sounds like there's sandpaper in there. There is no way I could effectively play this trumpet in a concert situation and get those slides to where they need to be. Now, where do they need to be? In that tune, we start on one of the two worst notes on the instrument. Our worst notes are D, that D, and my tuning slide's about that far out for the D. And right beside it is a C sharp that's even worse. And I set my keeper at a maximum distance so that I can get that C sharp in tune, and that's usually where it needs to be. Yep, that's where it needs to be for me. So if your slide's not moving, you're going to be unable to play those two notes in tune. Mojo starts on a D. Now, just for fun, if you fail to put that slide out, and you fail to put that slide out and leave it there, this is how far away from the note you'll be. Here's the D. And here it is on this trumpet. That's a different note. So when you start that tune, I don't know if I can do this. Let's try. It's going to be pretty bad. I saw a guy do this on Johnny Carson once. Isn't that a gorgeous sound? Does that sound anything like your trumpet section? So I can pretty much tell within one or two notes what that piece is going to sound like. I hope you'll accept that the slides have to be able to move. If your third valve slide doesn't move that easily, there's a couple of things you can do. The first thing you can do is get some grease on it. Let's use this trumpet. I'm going to pull that slide right out. Wow, that's a lot of friction. And I'm just going to put on some of this, my favorite old standby, the Selma Red Goo. So my process is I just put on a nice swirl of it. I've figured out how much is too much over the years. If you're not sure, just put a little less on. And if it didn't seem like it was enough, put some more on. That's easier than wiping it off your pants. Now, this is a trick I learned from some repair guys. You take a slide and you put it in and you just work the grease around so it gets everywhere on that tube. Now, it can be a little trickier with the second one, but you can do some of that and then put the thing together. Gently, gently, so you don't rearrange the metal. And up it goes. If it's a little too stiff, if you feel like the grease is just too thick and you don't have any other grease, take a little bit of valve oil and just put a drop on. Just one drop on each tube. Give it a chance to move around a little bit. It's going to dilute that grease. And see if that feels smooth enough. Now, this is smoother than it was, but it's still not smooth enough for me to feel like I could play this thing on a gig or even just for my own satisfaction. This first one is ridiculous. I already put some red goo on it while you weren't looking. Little valve oil, somewhat better. But really, what I think is going on with this trumpet is that even though it's several years old, those slides aren't even broken in properly. The next thing I'm going to do is get it good and greasy and undo this little lock and in and out a bunch of times. Get that thing moving. If I need to, I'll put some more grease on it and do this. I could do this 500 or 600 times before I'm satisfied that I've tried. If that doesn't do the job, if I've done that a bunch of times, put more grease on it, Done it a bunch of times, put more grease on it. If I don't feel like I've got that going, then I'm going to go next level on it. Next level could be destructive, maybe non-destructive. We'll talk about that in another video. I might polish it. Yeah, this isn't going to work for me. Just not good enough. If you're in grade 8 band or grade 7 band and you're playing that Mojo piece and you're like, what do I do? He says I have to have my slide out. Take the slide and put it in the right spot for the D and just leave it there. You don't actually need your third valve for any other notes in that piece. So just put it out and leave it out. When you're done with your trumpet for the day, put it back in. But that's a cheat. Know that you're cheating. The second valve slide should have a little bit of grease on it. It gets the same treatment. It's easy to get too much on this guy. In it goes, all the way in, leave it in, don't mess with it. If your first valve slide has a saddle like this, then it's meant to be adjustable. And if you watch me play, usually I will have that slide moving. It'll be for notes like occasionally an A. Sometimes I'll move it out for the E, especially that low E at the bottom of the staff. I find that that note is often sharp, and again, it's a little bit context dependent. But I'm doing the same thing with this first valve slide. I like this to be free to move, and sometimes I'll use it a little bit with the D so that my D isn't that far out with the third valve slide. It's actually a third and first. I just have worked it into my playing. It's just natural now. These valves are good. What is this? Yamaha. Yeah, I think the valves are broken in and the slides are not. I think that's what's going on with this instrument. Is yours doing the same thing? Is it possible that your third valve slide is not broken in? I think so. That's better. Much closer. This can go right back where it came from. Think about what you've done. Yeah, there's always cleanup. I told you you'd get greasy. So my trumpet, there's this little extra slide. Watch this. Oops, didn't do it. On my third valve slide, there, it did it. There's an extension. And it doesn't fit very well, to be honest. It's not a cheap trumpet. That slide doesn't fit very well in its place, and I need to take it out to dump my spit. So I have to use some special grease on that. It's got to be thicker than the red goo. It's got to be something really snotty. In fact, snot might work. Just give me a minute. I guess that would be gross. That's it for slides. That's it for slide greasing. If you've just washed your trumpet, you definitely need to grease your slides. It's quite possible that if you just bought your trumpet, you need to grease the slides. If you can't remember the last time you greased them, it's time to check them out. You at least need to make sure that they move, because when it comes time to clean your trumpet, all the slides have to come out because you're going to be brushing in there. Oh yeah, as for this trumpet, I think I'm going to have to go next level on this third valve slide to get it moving the way I want it to move. Meanwhile, I'll take my own advice and set this slide where it's in the right spot for D and get on with playing Mojo.